All right, good morning. Welcome to this sort of better morning, I guess. I like warm weather. But welcome to Houston Oasis. This is a community of compassion and reason, founded on the basis of some of our core values here, as you see. Some of the core values I like is meaning come from making a difference and human hands solve human problems. My name is Abhishek Mathur, and I'll be your MC today. We're very excited to introduce Jack Wathey here. He's a computational biologist whose research interests involve evolutionary algorithms, protein folding, and the biology of nervous systems. He has actually two books in the back here, and the first book is The Illusion of Presence. I believe the price for that one is $25, and the other one is his newer book. I believe The Phantom Guard is the one, and that one is 20, right? All right. With no further ado, I'm proud to introduce Dr. Jack Wathey.
Well, thank you very much for those kind words and for the invitation to be here. Earlier I said that innate knowledge is an essential foundation for learning in highly specialized behavioral domains. I also described my hypothesis of the innate neural model of mother, which requires some degree of innate embodiment. So the question constitutes a test of that hypothesis. Well, luckily there is some evidence that bears on this question. One line of evidence for this comes from studies of transsexuals. People who feel they're trapped in a physical body of the wrong sex and seek gender reassignment surgery. Typically, they report having these feelings since childhood, which suggests there's something innate about this. Neurologists V.S. Ramachandran and Paul McGeoch hypothesized that an innate neural model of bodily gender develops prenatally as the genitals themselves are developing, presumably at the direction of hormonal signals. Typically, the two fetus that develops a penis. In a minority of people, however, and for unknown reasons, the hormonal signals do not match in the two target structures. Maybe the dose of the hormone is too little in one place or arrives at the wrong time. Whatever the cause, the two diverge. A neural model of a female body develops in the brain of a person with male genitals, or vice versa. Ramachandran and McGeoch came up with an elegant way to test this idea. If this aspect of embodiment is innate, then in a typical male brain, in a male body, the brain expects the body to have a penis. But the brain of a man who feels he's in a woman's body is a brain that has an incomplete or missing representation of the penis. His brain does not expect the body to have a penis. Men who transition to women should therefore be less likely to experience a phantom penis after surgery than men who undergo removal of the penis for other reasons, like cancer treatment. By the same reasoning, women who transition to men should be less likely to experience phantom breasts than women who undergo mastectomy for breast cancer. Well, the neurologists did this study, and here's what they found. Transsexuals have significantly lower incidence of phantom sensations than cancer patients who had the same body part removed. Also, in data not plotted here, 62% of female to male transsexuals described having phantom penis sensations before their transition. That's how strong their sense of male embodiment had been. All of this is fairly strong evidence for innate neural model of the body, at least at the level of the reproductive organs. A similar mismatch between body and brain also occurs in a rare condition called xenomelia, in which a person experiences a normal and healthy limb as being alien to their bodies, so much so that they seek its amputation. This is essentially the inverse of a phantom limb. The limb is physically present and normal, but the neural model of it in the brain is somehow missing or malfunctioning. These feelings typically appear in early childhood, more often in a lower limb, and only part of the limb is perceived as being alien. Like transsexuals, these individuals appear to be driven toward drastic surgery by a feeling so compelling that it persists in the face of bodily evidence to the contrary. But the most dramatic evidence for innate embodiment comes from studies of subjects with congenitally missing limbs, some of whom experience phantoms. The study I'm citing here describes a woman who had been born without arms or legs and had experienced vivid phantom sensations of all four limbs for as long as she could remember. The numbers shown here are her subjective vividness ratings at specific locations on the phantoms, averaged over 3 sessions, with 0 meaning no sensation and 6 meaning the most vivid. To test the authenticity of these phantom sensations, the subject was shown a series of drawings of a hand or foot and had to identify them as left or right as quickly as possible. Subjects with complete limbs do this task by comparing the drawing to a mental image of their own hands or feet. When the digits are pointing down, as in the bottom row, this comparison requires a mental rotation, which significantly increases the reaction time. As you can see here for 3 control subjects, each number in the bottom row is larger than the one above it. Well, the same is true for the subject with the missing limbs, which shows that she is using the same strategy, superimposing each drawing with a mental image of her. But here's the most interesting part. These images show areas of activity in the subject's brain while she is sequentially touching each finger of one phantom hand to the phantom thumb. The pattern is similar for both hands. But one of the most striking things is that the low-level cortex that would normally represent the hand, indicated by the white arrows, is completely inactive in this subject. These would be the most active areas in an amputee who had lost the hand as an adult. Instead, when this subject moves her phantom fingers, the neural activity is in higher-level motor areas in the frontal lobe and in the superior parietal lobe farther back in the brain. The authors conclude that the representation of the body is from a combination of innate and learned mechanisms, with the innate components mostly in these higher level areas. The ones in the frontal lobe are known to be involved in the conscious initiation of movements. But for our purposes, the parietal lobe is more interesting. This is where the abnormalities are found in subjects with xenomelia, the desire to amputate a limb that feels alien. It's also where we see a connection between embodiment of the self and the perceived embodiment of others. One of the first to make that connection was British neurologist MacDonald Critchley, who put it this way: among the vague and curious anomalies of corporeal awareness or body image occurring with lesions of the subordinate parietal lobe, an idea of a presence may intrude. This intangible feeling, perhaps amounting to a firm belief but proving to be erroneous or delusional, is so unexpected and uncanny, stirred the victim. Like the amputee and his phantom limb, we may well prefer to mention it. It's the elusive limb. The two share common neural hardware, something Critchley inferred. One of his patients felt his body did not. Something being followed behind. When he had this sensation, he lost the feeling of strangeness that affected the left side of his own body. His But I want to. This paper describes it with the right, though she had no memory of the seizure. The focus of the seizures was a direct electrical stimulation of her left TPJ gave that another person was standing behind her side. Not explaining how she knew the person was there, but she felt that the sensed presence was threatening. Here's another example. As in the previous case, this was an epileptic patient whose cortex was being mapped with stimulating electrodes. When her left TPJ was stimulated, she felt the presence of a person directly behind her. When she was lying on her back during the stimulus, she felt that that person was lying beneath her. When she sat up in bed and clasped her arms around her raised knees, she felt the other person's arms around her upper body, a sensation she found disturbing. When asked to do some simple tasks with her hands during the stimulus, she said that the other person was trying to interfere with her actions. The sensed presence so faithfully mimicked this patient's behavior that it was obvious to the neurologist that she was misperceiving her own body as an alien presence. The patient was aware of the mimicry, but she never interpreted the presence as her own body, evidently because her mind could not penetrate the illusion that another person was there. All of this strongly implicates the TPJ and the awareness of the presence of another person, and that makes it a likely component of an innate neural model of mother. If my central hypothesis is right, the TPJ should also be critical in the illusion of God's presence felt by an adult. But I need to make some disclaimers about this point. The kind of sensed presence that comes from electrically stimulating the TPJ is not exactly what I have described as coming from an innate neural model of mother. In the neurological examples I just gave you, the sensed presences were disturbing or threatening, not unconditionally loving. The spatial and personal aspects of the illusion were there, and the attachment. Those things come from elsewhere in the brain. Here are some of the important places I've neglected this talk, because we just don't have time. In the book, I do the best I can to complete this, but we just can't cover that in a talk of this length. In the last chapter of the book, I also list some testable predictions and my suggestions for experiments. I don't have time for those either, except to give you the overarching prediction that the crying of a newborn for its mother.
Have any links to about what you talked about regarding neurology and gender and the need to transition? That sort of has verbiage which explains to a novice.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Do you have links that would have the language on gender and neurology for a novice? Yeah, where would we find? What would be a good source?
Oh, for the sources, yeah. If you go back and look at the video of that talk I just gave, I have references, everything sort of fine print on each slide. So there's a paper, I think actually two papers, Ramachandran and McGeoch published two papers on this. One was just stating the hypothesis before they did the research, and the other one was the result after they did the research. And their papers are pretty readable. I think if you find those, you'll have a good account. Ramachandran, and the second name is McGeoch. I think that's McGeoch, I think. I can't remember exactly, something like that. Yeah, I think there is some science behind that.
We had another question that was, is there, you asked why is is the neural model male? And if not, why is the perception of God as male?
Well, okay, so that's a great question. I often get that question. I kind of glossed over that aspect of it because for a lack of time, really. But the question is, basically, why is God not female? If my idea is right, why is God not female? My short answer is God is female in a great many of the world religions. And the feminine side of God creeps into religions, even if they are patriarchal religions that see God as male. The maleness of God, especially the authoritarian, the patriarchal, the judgmental, punishing male God that you see in the Old Testament, for example, that, I think, comes from this social root of religion, which I just mentioned briefly at the start of the talk and then ignored it for the rest of the talk. But it's a fascinating subject. I have some chapters about it, and actually I discuss it in both books, but mostly in the first book, The Illusion of God's Presence. And there are other books like Ara Norenzayan's book, Big Gods, and there's another one called The Alpha God. There's several like that. They go all the way back to Durkheim's early work on the anthropology of religion, this idea of the contribution of an authoritarian God in religion. So that's my short answer to that question.
So another question we had was, does the third man experience, in terms of survival, does that relate to the model you gave us today?
Great question. So the question is, what about the third man, the so-called third man experience? And that phrase, for those who haven't heard it, comes from a poem written about Ernest Shackleton's expedition to the South Pole, when he was trying to rescue his fellow explorers who were stranded in the Antarctic wasteland, and had to trek over a mountain in ice and terrible conditions to get to someone who could rescue them. And while they were on this trek, they had two of them reported this illusion of a sensed presence when they were, near freezing and starving and not sure they would survive. This happens fairly often in situations of extreme isolation, danger, extreme physical duress. It happens to mountaineers. Hypoxia may contribute to it. But it's the same kind of illusion that I was talking about, this illusion of a sensed presence, when you're in a desperate, life-threatening situation where you feel helpless. That mimics the helplessness of infancy, and I think it could awaken this circuitry that expects a primordial savior to be there. And so people have, because the brain is expecting it, the person experiences it.
So there was a lab in Canada that did a magnetic field test to sort of induce a religious experience. Are you familiar with that? And
yes, Michael Persinger is the person you're talking about, yes. Some of you may remember back in the 1990s, especially, a guy in Canada named Michael Persinger rose to notoriety because of a claim that he had built this customized motorcycle helmet with electromagnetic coils around it, and he would give patterns of magnetic stimulation to the brain to people who were in an isolation chamber, in a sensory deprivation chamber. And after some minutes or tens of minutes experiencing this, people would tend to report sensed presence illusions. Now, got a lot of press, got a lot of attention. A bunch of people tried it, including some atheists. But a group of scientists in Sweden tried to replicate his results and failed to replicate his results. And what they did discover, however, is that some of the people did report these sense presence experiences, but those experiences had no correlation whatsoever to the presence or absence of the magnetic fields. What they did correlate with was the suggestibility of the subjects. So this was one of those cases where putting someone in a sensory deprived environment and giving them the suggestion that they're about to experience something mystical will get the brain expecting it. And because the brain is expecting it, for a lot of people, it happens. It's just the kind of illusion that I was talking about. The same kind of thing with the Mooney face being right side up. And if you're expecting to see a face there or the face on Mars, your brain just fills in the missing information. So I think Persinger was kind of a quack, actually. He was kind of a crackpot. I don't think his results are taken seriously because of the failure to replicate. But in a way, he revealed an interesting phenomenon, that the power of suggestion could elicit these illusions. And there's a group in Denmark that has used that technique now, not expecting the magnetic field to do anything, but they just tell the subjects that this is what we're going to do. And some people have experienced sense presence illusions, and then they'll go in and do some experiments and see how they can manipulate the phenomenon. I talk about that in the Phantom God.
Before I get to our last question, I will say Dr. Wathey will be in the back signing his book. So if you bought a copy, he'll be more than happy to sign it for you. But our final question is, the illusory experience can occur and be replicated. Can it also be controlled? And if so, how?
Can it be controlled? I'm not really sure. The kinds of illusory sense presence experiences that I showed you for the epileptic patients, those could be controlled very directly and reproducibly with the flick of a switch. But they were doing direct electrical stimulation in the brain. So they had electrodes surgically implanted in the brain, which is something that is only done to a human when it's medically necessary. And for epileptic patients who are about to undergo surgery to try to remove an epileptic focus, it is medically necessary. So that's a kind of a rare thing, and it's not something you could just do routinely with anybody. I don't think we have any other way to elicit it with that degree of certainty or reproducibility.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Wathey. And okay, thank you very much. It's a great talk. Thank you. Thanks for everything. All right. Before Pete comes over for a last song here, I'd like to introduce Richard Andrews. Also, I'd like to make a point here about our volunteers. They've been here since 9 a.m. and they do an incredible job. And if you'd like to help us set up, tear down, and do all the other things during the week, please let me know or somebody in the back know, and we'll get you going on this. And Richard Andrews, our treasurer.
Hey, folks, I know you get nervous whenever the treasurer gets up here, but we're just happy to have you here. If you are able to help us out a little bit by dropping a few bucks in the black hat in the back, that would be great. We also have more modern ways of giving, which are listed back there. You can take a picture of that guide. And if you're not able to give, that's fine. We're just happy to have you here. And there's a few books left in the back by the author. I think we have 2 or 3 books left. And if those books are not purchased today, then Oasis will buy them and make them available next week. Thanks, folks.
I have a couple notes. Dr. Wathey's books are in the back. He's signing them as we speak, and we have a couple events as well before we start off. One is next Saturday we have the food bank volunteering. It's from 1 to 4 on February the 25th. And let me know if you have any questions. It's on social media pages to RSVP. It's best that you RSVP using the link on the food bank website so that they know we're coming, how many people are coming and all that. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm in charge of that.
Tasted love so sweet, all of it was lost on me. Bought and sold like property, sugar on my tongue, kept falling over, kept looking backwards. I got lost believing that the symbols should be hard. Wasted love for you, traded down for something new. It's hard to change the way you lose, to think you've never won. Oh, every day's the start of something beautiful. In the air, words won't matter. In the air, nothing stays the same. In the end, our dreams just scatter and fall like rain.